Tomorrow marks the most significant day remaining on the men's basketball schedule for the Iowa State Cyclones until postseason play comes. Chances for Quad 1A wins don't come often, but beating Houston on the road would be a chance for Iowa State to spring themselves forward and set themselves apart to the selection committee. It's also a much needed win after the 3 game skid earlier this season against K State, Arizona, and Kansas. A 3 game skid that definitively knocked the Cyclones off of the line for a 1 seed and left them fighting to get back in that conversation. With the firepower that the SEC brings to the college basketball conversation this year, it leaves some difficult hurdles for Iowa State to clear if they want to get back on that 1 seed line. All that the Cyclones can do, though, is win the games in front of them. Beating Houston tomorrow is a necessity in order to do just that. Today's Friday, February 21st. I'm Matt Menson, and welcome to the Cornfield Sports Pod. To your right is my co-host, Blake Peterson.
I'm a little skeptical about tomorrow.
Well, if you were going in saying that we were absolutely guaranteed a win, I would tell you you're insane.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I might actually, you know what? Just for you, I might tell you that you're insane anyway. But
Of
yeah,
course, when am I not?
if you believed that, if you believed that we were just going to, with 100% certainty that we were just gonna march into Houston and take a win, you'd be nuts. Houston's an elite team with an elite home court advantage. And we'll
Yeah,
get
they've got
into we'll get into
they've got
that in detail here in a little bit.
they've got the hype of College Game Day behind their backs with them too.
That they do. Um, yeah, it's that's going to be a tough game. It'll be the toughest game that we've played since we played Auburn, and it's the toughest game remaining on our schedule right now. And it's going to stay that way until likely the Big 12 tournament. And we might be on a collision course to run into Houston again there. But
The Big 12 as a whole is hyping up this game and like showing flashbacks from the Big 12 tournament too.
yeah, well, when we absolutely beat the crap out of them, largest margin of victory over an AP #1 team ever was that game. Yeah, we beat them into another dimension. Like they were shell shocked. But that was last year. That was different basketball teams. Uh, we got games to talk about. We got games to talk about for our team right now. Those of you watching, make sure you like and subscribe. Get this kind of commentary every week, or at least most weeks, considering we just came from a week off.
Dude, wanted to watch baseball.
I like baseball. Sue me. Iowa
does?
State needs baseball. I'll die on that hill.
Same.
Um, but anyway, let's talk about this basketball game against Cincinnati about a week ago, 6 days ago, last Saturday. Home game, we win it by 11. Spread was 11.5, so unfortunately we didn't cover. But that was certainly the chippiest game of the year for ISU. I didn't think we were going to get chippier than the Wheat Eaters, but we did.
hmm
At least in terms of, the teams getting chippy. The students got chippy with K-State. The students not so chippy for the Cincinnati game because there wasn't a whole lot for the students to get chippy over. It's not like Cincinnati's that good of a team. But the big thread that comes from this game was that there was a grand total of 4 technical fouls assessed over the course of this game.
Got to correct you on that because in here you have one on ISU. There was actually 2 on ISU. One for Keyshawn Gilbert's like getting chippy, and then a double technical was actually called on Deshaun Jackson too.
Okay, so then in that case it was 5, not 4.
Yep.
Um,
But you're right on the 3 on Cincy. So
yeah, I
flat.
forgot about the one that was assessed to Deshaun.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the one on Keyshawn. But either way, the players were getting chippy with each other, but the you know what? Players get chippy with each other sometimes. Games get intense. Once one player does it, then another player does it, and it just kind of goes that way. What I thought was bizarre, though, was the Cincy coach, Wes Miller. He got teed up after his own player made a shot. I mean,
I still remember
he was well
that.
outside of his coach's box, so they gave him that. He must have said something to the official that put him over the edge. Because let's be real, most of the time officials do not pay attention to the coach's box. Coaches go outside of it all the time, and they get an endless stream of warnings, but no actual repercussion. Um, that needs to be a point of emphasis for officials, moving forward. Because why have the rule if you're not going to follow it? But that's how that goes. Lots of extra free throws going around in that game from technical fouls. Actually, there was just a lot of free throws happening in general. Cincinnati could not stay out of foul trouble. And that's what kept Iowa State going, because it's not like we played our best game of the season either.
We most certainly did not.
We had a season high 18 turnovers. So we were not looking great by any means. But Iowa State won by playing clean ball. Iowa State committed 13 fouls. Cincinnati committed a whopping 24 fouls. I mean, that's crazy. Both Dylan Mitchell and Jizzle James fouled out, right?
That's how you get into foul trouble too.
Once Jizzle James fouled out, wait a minute. You just said that's how you get into foul trouble. Yes, you get into foul trouble by fouling. Nice analysis, Blake. Ooh, boy. This might be a short episode if that's the depth we're going into. Yeah, Jizzle James was easily their best player of the night. Side note, who names their kid that? Who names your kid Jizzle James?
Is that a nickname or something? Or...
I sure hope so. If that's his legal name, I have questions that I don't want answers to.
I don't think any of us want the answer.
I'll leave it up to the listeners of the video to decide if they want answers on that, but they can know that I will certainly not go seeking them.
Nope.
But Jizzle James fouled out, and at that point, Cincinnati's offense was completely gone because he was their offense. Dylan Mitchell also fouled out. Day Thomas had 4. But 3 players on their own combining for 14 fouls is, generally speaking, going to spell disaster for your team. You give teams enough chances at the charity stripe, they're going to cash in. And that's what Iowa State did. We made it count when we needed to. So it was more well than enough to make up for the 18 turnovers that we had. Which hopefully that's just a fluke, because the 18 turnovers was bad. That's something that's got to get fixed. Another thing that's got to get fixed, we can't let inferior teams go on runs. The Cyclones got out to a 12-point lead in the first half behind some threes from Curtis Jones. But by halftime, since he had tied it back up at 39 apiece. Now, in the second half, Iowa State stayed on the gas, and Cincinnati couldn't keep up. So we outscored Cincinnati in the second half. I believe it was 42-31, something like that. 11-point margin, which that was the same as our margin of victory. So that made a big difference. Us going faster and locking down harder in the second half and making the necessary adjustments um, to get a solid double digit win. Again, yeah, you want to cover the spread, but ultimately winning by double digits looks good to the selection committee, especially against a conference opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in a year when the Big 12 is down, winning by double digits is particularly important because you got to show some semblance of dominance. Um, in the game, Iowa State, we spread the ball around well. Can't complain about that. Um, Curtis Jones popped off early and stayed strong. He led the scoring with 22. But Joshua Jefferson, Milan Momcilovic, and Taman Lipsey were all right near each other with 13, 12, and 11 points apiece. Really can't complain about that. Solid team performance. My goodness, is it nice having Milan back.
So nice.
We
And I
spread the floor so much better.
I hate how it just felt like we depended on him, like during like K-State, Arizona, and those games.
Well, I think it was not so much that we depended on him was the feeling, but because I think the feeling was always that we kind of depended on Curtis Jones. But when we didn't have anybody to take any pressure off of Jones, that's when things really became a problem. Because Milan is dangerous from outside the arc. He's a very good shooter. Doesn't get as many opportunities as Cujo does, but he's someone that is going to have to draw attention from other teams. When he was gone, the attention that would ordinarily be given to Milan was some of it getting diverted to Jones because some of our other players, be it Nate Heisey or Demarion Watson or whoever, just are not as big of a scoring threat. Um, so that was a very important thread, and having Milan Momcilovic back right now is a very, very big deal for the Cyclones. Again, we have only lost once this year with Milan in the lineup, and that was to the team that is currently ranked number one in the country, and it was on a last second tip in. This team is elite with Momcilovic in the lineup. When we are fully healthy, this is a team that can beat anybody. I'm not saying that they will beat everybody, but nothing is outside their realm of possibility. Now, what was outside the realm of possibility was Colorado beating us on our home floor. Um, that one was a foregone conclusion before Colorado even stepped on the plane to fly to Ames.
Will Colorado ever win in Hilton? No.
Probably not in our
Insert
lifetimes, not at this rate.
insert TJ's media time. No.
Yeah. That's our third victory over Colorado in the span of 3 months. So now we've beat them home, away, and neutral. And it's not outside the realm of possibility that we play them in Kansas City, too, in the Big 12 tournament. So we have the regular season sweep on them. Why not rub it in a little bit
We'll
in the
go
Big
for a
12
fourth.
tournament? I'd like a fourth win over them. But yeah, the story going into this game was not who was going to win. It was a foregone conclusion. Colorado's the worst team in the Big 12. Hilton Coliseum is a deadly place to have to play. The bigger story was the cold. The lead story going into a basketball game was the weather, which kind of tells you that this game was kind of boring. It was not a particularly exciting game. But we're going into this game and we're not talking about we're sitting in the bleachers before the game starts, and we're not talking about how the teams are going to do, how we match up, basketball things like we usually talk about with any given opponent. We're talking about, I wonder how bad attendance is going to be today. And it was bad. It was a bad showing. The students didn't want to go out in the cold. And to some extent, I get it. because we didn't really want to go out in the cold either. Like normally we wait in line for a long time just so that we can get the seats that we want. We went out there. I think I got there 15 minutes before doors opened, and there was basically nobody out there, and we still got the seats we wanted. Normally we have to wait longer in order to do that. Not the case with against Colorado. So you combine horrible frigid temperatures with an opponent that no one cares to watch because we've already beat them twice, and the first time we played them, we beat them really badly. It wasn't much of a spectacle. It wasn't much to watch. The reported attendance for this game was 14,267. I don't think I believe that. I think there was more than just a few hundred open seats in the upper level of the student section because the upper level of the student section was empty. It was just outright empty.
Yeah, you see those students up there like who just who prefer to sit in like the upper deck. You just see them like dispersed out.
Like 12 students that were up there and however big that section is.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what, probably 700 seats up there?
Probably.
Somewhere in that neighborhood? Maybe more. I don't know. I'm
I
not
feel like
entirely sure how the student section breaks down in terms of seating because you got two parts in the lower bowl, one part in the upper bowl, but the upper bowl part is larger by capacity. So it's a larger share. It's not exactly a 1/3 split. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how that breaks down. Either way, that section was not full enough in order to hit that 14,267 mark that was reported. So I'm really not sure where that number is coming from. It wasn't a great look for a top 10 team, especially one that was finally turning around now that Milan is healthy.
Mm-hmm.
We got things going back our way again. We're back in the win column. We got a new win streak, that we're building up. And you want to have players show up. And not player. Well, of course the players showed up. You want to have students show. You want to have students show up. And the other fans that had the reserve seating, they all showed up. The rest of the upper bowl was pretty full. So the upper bowl looked more like a horseshoe. You got the reserve seating holders. They're all there, and then you just got the student section just blank. Empty, dead, quiet, and the student sections that were in the lower bowl were not exactly energetic either.
They knew the high stakes coming into this game.
Yeah. The only thing that was high in this game was like the oxygen levels for what Colorado is used to. They are used to less oxygen. That's about all I got. They didn't really have anything going their way. They had a couple things go their way over the course of the entire game. The Buffs, they actually did hold a brief lead, Blake. At one point, the Buffs held a lead. They scored the first 2 points of the game on free throws.
Wasn't even there. I got to the game late, so I couldn't be there to witness a Buffs lead. How could I miss that in my lifetime?
Shame on you.
Wow.
Yeah, 2 made free throws. And by the time Colorado had made a shot from the floor, Iowa State had already claimed a lead that they would not surrender for the entire game. It was a while before the Buffs actually made a field goal. We were like, what, 4 or 5 minutes in, I think, before the Buffs actually made a shot from the floor.
I was walking in during the first media timeout, and I think the score was 20-5.
It would have been something like that. At one point, we were winning 20-6 because we had the 14-point lead, and then we basically just maintained that for the rest of the game. The other thing that went well for Colorado was that They had a player put up 20 points on offense. He was all of their offense. But Bango Dak played a good game, at least in terms of scoring. His rebounds and such were not fantastic for someone in his position, but for most of the roster, otherwise, Colorado just struggled at everything.
Yeah, for a team like that, you just hate to see Dak like just try to carry the team like that too.
Yeah, he probably should
'Cause
be playing somewhere else.
I know.
That way he could, actually maybe win a game.
Yeah, he's way too good to be playing for Colorado too.
Yeah. But there really isn't a whole lot else to analyze from that one. Beating Colorado doesn't mean much because they suck. And this is where we go into the big kahuna tomorrow at 1:00 on ESPN at the Fertitta Center against 5th-ranked Houston. Blake, their home court advantage worries me. Because they might not have the highest capacity arena ever, but they get the Fertitta Center rocking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things that is worth noting here, the Cougs are not invincible at home. They don't lose at home often.
They don't.
It's rare.
Only 7,000 seats. Hey.
Small school,
It is.
relatively speaking. But they do have one conference loss at home. That was to Texas Tech, who we beat in Lubbock. Oh, and by the way, Houston's next game after us is against Texas Tech in Lubbock. You know that game has to be sitting on their minds as a potential distraction. Iowa State is not a team that ordinarily anybody would overlook. But in this specific situation, when Houston might be fixated on that revenge game in Lubbock, in front of those Red Raider fans, maybe their focus isn't entirely there tomorrow. Maybe they're just a little bit too distracted.
That's not a bad observation.
Now, I don't think that that's a very likely thing to happen, but it's not outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah, because Kelvin Sampson, I bet, wants to keep him focused on like one game at a time.
Every coach is going to say, keep him focused one game at a time. That's just coach speak at this point. Every coach says that. But at some point, there's limits to how much saying that can actually affect anything. Because that's a lot easier said than done. When you're playing for a good team and you lose a game that you shouldn't lose, you want to beat that other team back. If we end up playing K-State in the Big 12 tournament, fully expect K-State to get the stones beat off of them. I mean, that would be an ugly, ugly game. Especially now that we got Milik back. So the defense that K-State was playing that worked would not work anymore. But before we get into too many hypothetical games, because we criticize the SEC enough for winning hypothetical football games, we need to talk about how the Fertitta Center and the environment that occurs there lends Houston to its greatest strength. Its defense, which you can make the argument is the most elite defense in the country. They lead the Big 12 in points allowed by a margin of 6.6 points per game. They're the only one that's allowing less than 60 points a game. They're in a whole different class. I mean, their defense it is mighty impressive. Iowa State's defense is no slouch, but we're not in that category.
Of course, course, people talk about our defense as like we're built on that like that defensive mindsets. It's just what's gonna hold up better like down in Houston.
Well, here's the thing. Our defense is good, but it's not as good as Houston's. We allow 9 more points per game than Houston does. That's a pretty significant difference.
Oh yeah.
And Houston also holds its opponents to only 38.3% shooting from the floor. It's tough to make a bucket against Houston. Now, Iowa State's got more offensive firepower than most of the other teams that Houston has played against. When I think of other teams that Houston has played against that have a lot of offensive firepower, the first two teams that come to mind are Auburn and Alabama. Which, of course, Houston did not perform very well against either of those two teams. So at some point, the dam's got to break. But as I mentioned before, this game's going to be the most difficult for Iowa State since we played Auburn. So we got Auburn as a common opponent between us and Houston, as well as some conference opponents. But the Auburn game, that was one that ISU had in reach, and barring some kind of an early disaster, I think that means we absolutely have the capability to make it a game against Houston. But playing on Houston's home court, again, that's the X factor. The Fertitta Center and its hostile crowd make things difficult. And road crowds in general make things difficult. In conference play, Blake, Iowa State's only 4-3 on the road. Now, I want you to put an asterisk next to that, because all 3 of those losses are with Milan Momcilovic injured.
Mm-hmm.
We have only lost one game with Milan Momcilovic healthy, and that was a neutral site game in Hawaii against Auburn, the number 1 team in the country, who has set themselves apart enough that they were able to lose a game and still remain the number 1 team in the country. They are good.
Yeah.
And we took them to the wire. We had a lead built up against them, and they had to mount a comeback against us to win it.
Yeah, we held a significant lead too at half too.
Yes. If you want our reaction to that, you can go find the episode back from like November. But one of the things that's worth noting here, Auburn, as I mentioned earlier, is a common opponent between us and Houston. It's also the only truly elite common opponent, which means that it's comparable in a way that some of our other common opponents from the Big 12 Conference are not. Iowa State performed better against Auburn than Houston did, and Houston played Auburn at the Fertitta Center. Victory was a possibility for the Cyclones until the very last second of the game against Auburn. Houston was outclassed the entire time. And then, as I mentioned before, Houston has that disadvantage of their focus may be a little bit strained. They may be a little bit distracted. But we'll find out at 1 p.m. tomorrow on ESPN. And then we have a quick turnaround. Tuesday, we take a trip to Stillwater. This game should be about as predictable as the Colorado game, even though we're on the road. Blake, Oklahoma State cares less about Oklahoma State basketball than we do.
No.
Oddly enough.
That's been very well known.
OSU basketball is so bad that they genuinely haven't warranted any of my thought until now when I got to do an analysis of them. And I'm looking at their roster and I'm like, who are these guys?
Exactly.
Nobody talks about them because there's not much to talk about.
Matt, what are Oklahoma State's wins in conference play?
Well, their last 4 wins anyway. I believe they have 5 conference wins. But their last 4 are against Colorado, Utah, Arizona State, and UCF. So the bottom of the barrel. And there's a smattering of losses in between those 4 games.
Oh yeah.
And only some of those losses are to respectable programs in the Big 12. Other losses are to teams like K-State and TCU that are very beatable teams. Um, so basically, against bad opponents, the Pokes have a chance to win. Against good opponents, let alone great or elite opponents like us, get out of here. Oklahoma State's not winning this game. The Pokes, they got 3 players that are averaging scoring in double figures, and the 2 best among those are still only at 12.1. They don't have much offense. Meanwhile, Iowa State's second best in the Big 12 in scoring. OSU allows the second most points scored. The only team that's worse, UCF, allowed ISU to put up 77 points on their home floor and a staggering 108 points at Hilton Coliseum. So
I'd love to see the attendance for this game.
Probably not great because their fans don't want to watch their team just get absolutely bullied. And then, I mean, the only thing that Oklahoma State basketball is really good at is just getting physical. But it's a double-edged sword that usually comes back to get them. They get to the free throw line more than any other school in the Big 12, but Iowa State is second in that category. There's not a large margin of difference there. But Oklahoma State also commits the most fouls out of any team in the conference. Whereas Iowa State's in the better half of the conference when it comes to playing clean defense. So that's just going to play right into Iowa State's hands. The Cyclones will be able to bait Oklahoma State into committing a lot of fouls without getting into as much foul trouble themselves. They'll still get into some, but not as much as Oklahoma State will. Women's basketball. Blake, win at Kansas, 93-80.
Yeah, we're definitely doing better now. Like all of a sudden, it's just the time of year that I don't know, women's basketball just start to pick things up.
Or Kansas is worse than they looked to start the year.
Yeah. And so, biggest thing from the Kansas game, Emily Ryan had a great start. Helps our offense early to set the tone. A lot of what I think was kind of firing her up. She was playing in front of her friends and family from Kansas. Kind of driving some momentum for her and the team especially. And then she ended up having a season high 20 points that night.
We need to get more consistent scoring from Ryan though. We haven't seen that for a lot of games, and she's someone that we need to be getting in double figures on a game by game basis.
Exactly. She's shown mostly coordination and support, down low and just just making sure. How do I say this? I'll stop talking.
What?
I know. I lost my train of thought. She's showing more support than playing sort of offense, like getting points on the board.
Yeah, we need her to be a lead in terms of scoring though more often too. Because oftentimes she's trying to force it into other players to do the scoring.
Yep, she's more than capable too.
Right. Shot well though from the floor for that game. Harris and Brown, they both put up 17. Can't complain about that. Crooks put up 25. Can't complain about that. Most of which was in the second half, which is really weird to say because it seems like it's always the opposite with that. But yeah, we put on an offensive clinic. Kansas didn't play defense, and then
Oh, they really didn't.
Wednesday night we played the Houston basketball team that is the exact opposite of their men's team, both in terms of gender and talent. Houston women's basketball is bad.
I know, but they sort of gave us a run for our money considering how many players they had. They had 6 active players when we faced them.
They might have 6 that had minutes. You can't play a game with only 6 active listed. You have to have at least 8.
And so I think you'll be happy to hear this. Kelsey Jones has a great game. Led the team with 13. It was more so dispersed between everyone else shooting.
Yeah, as I say, I see lead with 13, and that's not like I'm glad Kels is scoring because we need to be getting her more scoring opportunities. Um, but 13 being the lead is not a great number.
You know, let's do be glad that she was the spark, like at the start of the game too.
Yep. Now the stuff that I really like to see though is when you see, players that are dominating all over the floor in every different aspect, and we saw that again from Addie Brown. She's been a double double machine this year, and this game was no exception to that. 12 points, 12 boards. Throw in 6 assists with there, so she's distributing the ball too. Can't complain about that. Looking forward here, Blake, tomorrow.
Please don't.
Tomorrow, we play a ranked opponent.
We haven't beaten a
On
ranked
their
opponent
home
yet.
floor. But
We need a ranked win. We need a ranked win, Matt. So bad.
we
don't.
do need a ranked win.
Mm.
I'm not gonna lie. I saw that it was Baylor, and I was about to say, "Oh, we could beat Danae Fritz on her home floor." But I'm like, "Oh wait, never mind. She transferred again." Yep, Baylor got the same treatment that we did. um, so now it's just a game with not a lot of stakes, except for the fact that we really need to get a ranked win so that we look better. Tomorrow, 1:30 on Fox.
Mm-hmm. If
So
we don't get a ranked win,
they'll be playing at the same time as the men's. So
if you don't get a ranked win soon, then we're looking at WNIT. Ugh. I don't want
yeah,
to think about that.
yeah. Right now, we do need a statement win though. We need some Q1 wins. The biggest win of the season is Drake at this point.
Ah.
Especially now that Kansas has returned to, what they usually are. When we played them for the first time this year, they looked actually pretty solid, and we had not yet beat a Power 5 team, and I thought we were going to lose that game, and then we beat them pretty soundly. And then we beat them again soundly at Allen Fieldhouse just here in this last week. So Kansas isn't all they're cracked up to be. We don't have wins over anybody better than Drake. So yeah, we need a win that is a little bit higher quality than what we have.
Hopefully, we can get those as well in the Big 12 tournament.
Yeah, that wouldn't hurt either. But Baylor will be our only chance to get one of those wins here in the next week, because our only other game in the next week is a Tuesday trip to Orlando when we play at UCF, who is not a good opponent. We played them once this year. We beat the brakes off of them in Hilton Coliseum.
They were also injured at that game too.
They were. Now, note, UCF played so bad in this game that Lily Hansford scored in double figures.
Forgot about that.
Yeah. She had 4 threes in that game. And then she missed a bunch of threes after that. I'm still not a fan of Hansford taking a bunch of shots. But Audie Crooks, Addie Brown, Ariana Jackson, they all played, stellar games last time we saw UCF. But UCF just is not real impressive in any aspect of the game. They don't score from the floor or from the stripe. They have low completion percentages from both, relatively speaking. They struggle to rebound. They turn the ball over a lot. They have the second worst scoring defense in the league. They allow other teams to pass the ball around and create opportunities. They're last in the league in assists allowed per game. They don't create many turnovers. UCF doesn't have much going for them. they don't even have their attendance going for them. Like the UCF is already not a basketball school. Their fans, generally speaking, do not care about basketball. They care about football. So much less do they care about women's basketball. The home court advantage should be practically non-existent. The home attendance for their last game, which was a win over Arizona State, was just over 1,000.
That's crazy.
I mean, that's hardly anybody,
dude.
So there's no crowd to fill Edition Arena to fill it with noise and disrupt your opponents. So knowing how Iowa State travels, it's a fair possibility that we have more fans there than they do.
We are going to have more fans though.
It's a distinct possibility. ISU alum that live in Florida now are plentiful. So
yeah, they're crazy down there too.
We'll see if that happens. That's the real competition for that game, is who shows up with more fans. We'll find out who wins that 6 p.m. on ESPN Plus on Tuesday. Now, let's get into a mixed weekend for wrestling. We won against South Dakota State. We lost at UNI. Pretty much every bout was chalk. There really was not much in the wake of upsets going on. I'm looking at this here, trying to see if there's anything that really stands out to me. The only thing that wasn't absolute chalk against South Dakota State was at heavyweight when Daniel Herrera beat Luke Rasmussen. And that was an 8-7 decision. Herrera was ranked 27th. Rasmussen was ranked 26th. So at that point, it's a coin flip bout. But looking at all of these other ones, the higher ranked wrestler won. If there was a ranked versus an unranked, the ranked won. And we didn't have
basically
any
everything you would expect.
Yeah, the entire duel was chalk. Predictive metrics probably would have hit this one perfectly. And then if we go to the UNI duel, this one was also basically chalk the entire time. With, I think we had one or two exceptions in this one.
One definitely for me.
Yes, 149 was not chalk.
Dude.
Colin Realbuto beating Paniro Johnson.
If you were here at the McLeod Center when I was there, oh my goodness. Everyone was calling for stalls, which
he was stalling.
Which were very much granted.
And
Paniro
rightfully
Johnson,
so. He was stalling.
Yeah. Colin Realbuto, four stall calls. One of them,
Paniro got called for stalling 4 times. Not
yeah,
Realbuto.
That's what I meant. Sorry.
I don't care how much you shoot in the first period. If you don't shoot in the third period, you're going to get called for stalling. It's not that hard to figure out.
Mm-hmm. And like those last seconds of the third period, like it was just so obvious. And
he wasn't wrestling.
No,
if you don't wrestle, you're not going to win.
Mm-hmm. And towards the end of that match, before sudden victory, both coaching benches got very animated too. The UNI coaching bench were aesthetic too. They were inching towards our bench too. Kevin Dresser also had some things to say. He was pointing at UNI coach. I forgot his name. Schwab, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Dresser does not like that coaching staff. I can tell. But
it's a rivalry. It's a conference rivalry and it's an in-state rivalry.
What more can you expect there?
Paniro's got to wrestle better. He should know better than to stall out like that.
Yeah, exactly.
4 stall calls is ridiculous. You should not, as a wrestler, you should never be allowing that.
but
That
but
was
Sun
really, really poor discipline on Paniro's part.
yeah, Sun victory happens, and it's not long until Robuto gets that takedown.
Yeah.
McLeod Center just erupts after that. Robuto deserved that win, and he got it.
Yep.
And especially speaking from, I'll throw in the post game presser there too because I was there also. He brings his 4-month-old baby into the presser, and then like the story he had to tell there, I was like, yeah, he deserved that win. I'm coming from a Cyclone. I'm personally glad he got that win too.
Well, Paniro didn't deserve to win it, so
Oh, not in the slightest too.
no. If you want to win a wrestling bout, you got to wrestle. It's not that hard to figure out. Going down the rest of the scorecard here. Cody Chittum beating Ryder Downey was an upset, which kept us at least temporarily in the duel. Before UNI popped off 4 straight wins, and at that point it was pretty much over. Daniel Herrera beating Lance Runyon was an upset. I didn't see that coming.
Not me neither.
Um, and you could look at Jared Sima and MJ Gaitan. I don't think that's an upset. I think Sima is actually underranked. Um, I don't think he should have been ranked behind Gaitan in the first place. It was going to be a coin flip bout kind of from the beginning anyway, just because of Gaitan's wrestling style. But in terms of who should be ranked higher, I think it should have been Sima to begin with.
If I could talk about Daniel Herrera. It's like I'm on the sidelines taking pictures. I'm like, this is so boring. And then ultimately comes out with a win. I was like, oh, well, that happened.
Yeah, not an eventful bout when the final score of the bout is 3-1.
Yeah, I know.
And then, of course, that duel ended with Kyle Gulhofer pinning Osmani Diversant at 125. So, yeah, not a great duel for the Clones. But now we get to go wrestle Mizzou. It's going to be at Mizzou. They have a dual record of 5-9 and are still somehow ranked 25th. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but here we are.
Crazy.
And I'm feeling good about this bout. I took a look at some of the predictive metrics. I generally speaking in agreement with the predictive metrics on this one. I don't see a whole lot of things that looked funny to me. The projected starting lineups right now, I'll go through these bout by bout here. Ethan Perryman and Gage Walker. I'm gonna go coin flip on that one, but I'm leaning Perryman. At 133, Evan Frost and Cade Moore. I like Frost to win that one very easily, probably with bonus points. 141, Jacob Frost, I think, should beat 16th ranked Josh Edmond. They've wrestled once before. Frost won a 17-3 or not 7-2-3 decision. And when guys have wrestled each other before, unless they've gone back and forth, I tend to go with the guy who's won already. Because what you see a lot more is they beat the same wrestler over again. So I'll go with Jacob Frost in that one. Paniro Johnson over whoever he ends up wrestling should be a win, probably with bonus points, unless he decides he wants to do a bunch more stalling. As long as he keeps wrestling for all 7 minutes, that'll be bonus points, I think. 157, Cody Chittum will be wrestling unranked James Conway. This one should be another W. They've wrestled before. Chittum won it in an 11-4 decision, close to being a major. Conway's 500 on the year. Chittum is Chittum. He doesn't lose much. Now we get to some of these heavier weights. This is where Iowa State's had a little bit more of a disadvantage just in pretty much every duel. But this is where I think Mizzou's going to pick up some of the points on us. 165, Aiden Riggins is not going to beat Cam Steed. I would be shocked if Mizzou puts in Joel Milan for this one. I see no reason why they would not put Cam Steed in and to take the victory for him and keep climbing him up the rankings. Riggins has wrestled Steed before. Steed won it. At 174, this one could get ugly. I would not be shocked to see bonus points in this one for Mizzou because MJ Gaitan is going to have to wrestle top-ranked Keegan O'Toole.
We meet again, Keegan O'Toole. I remember all the hype coming last year.
O'Toole went up a weight class.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he wrestled at 165 before.
Got it. So, I remember the hype from last year: Keegan O'Toole versus David Carr.
Yeah, if
they all get sick.
Right. If he hadn't gone up a weight class this year, then 165 would be really entertaining between O'Toole and Mitchell Messenbrink over at Penn State. But 165 is just kind of Messenbrink's to lose now.
Yeah.
184, Evan Bachman and Colton Hawks. I got this one as a coin flip. I have absolutely no idea who's going to win this. They don't have any past history wrestling against each other. The predictive metrics were favoring Hawks because I couldn't even decipher it. Whatever it is, it's very marginal. 197, Nate Schoen versus Jesse Cassat. Cassat's not a good wrestler. Like, Schoen is nothing special right now because he's young. As he gets older, he'll get better. Jesse Cassat is probably belonging in, like, D2 or D3. And he's wrestling D1. He doesn't bolt. Like, he's not good. He's not good.
Poor guy.
So 197, a weight class that we don't win often. I think we'll be able to win there. And then at heavyweight, this one should be another coin flip bout between Daniel Herrera and Jarrett Stoner. It's also possible that Seth Nitzel might wrestle Herrera. But this one, assuming it is Stoner that is wrestling against Herrera, probably a coin flip bout. Herrera did wrestle Stoner earlier this year, and Herrera won that in a 5-3 decision. So it was close. They've wrestled, and that's the only time they've wrestled each other before. And with Herrera being a young wrestler, he's not going to be as consistent as some of the older guys are. But it would take pretty much all of the coin flip bouts to go Mizzou's way and Keegan O'Toole to get bonus points in order for Mizzou to actually win this. I think that the odds are very much in Iowa State's favor. And so we'll leave you on that high note for today's show. Follow the Cornfield Sports Pod on Twitter at CSportsPod. Blake, where can they find you at?
You can find me, as always, BlakeAttack1846 on Twitter.
And, of course, you can find me at SFMattISU. Tap the follow button on Spotify, plus button on Apple. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube and Rumble. Hit the little bell for notifications.
This has been Blake Peterson, guys.
I'm Matt Menson, and this has been the Cornfield Sports Pod.